all the greatness and ability that we have, we're procrastinators. And we procrastinate because the level of our self-esteem. We don't know who we are. Therefore, we don't know what we've accomplished. And since we don't know it, we're slow in accomplishing more. We don't think we have the ability to do magnificent things.
Good afternoon, my name is Baba Nuhiri with the Hour of Truth, and this is
Hakeem Green. You already know what time it is, live and direct. Yeah.
We're here interviewing. I would like you guys to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, Yakhazak Allah, Yashar Allah, El Ali Day.
Tanisha.
You guys are dressed really, really nice. Like, I really like the way that you guys are dressed. Can you give our audience like an explanation of your dress wear and what it represents?
Well, these are actually the ancient garments of, or the garments of ancient Kemet. And
Nice.
what I'm wearing is the head jet with the ostrich feathers, which represents the Atef, which is the crown of Asar, the god of the underworld.
And for people who don't know, his crown is a crown that is traditionally worn and represented by the deity Osir and also kings and priests. The Atef crown, Atef, is used to denote a father. So, you know, this is the crown of manhood and fatherhood and kingship and priesthood. And I just want to ask you guys, are you guys a part of a priesthood? Do you represent one, or?
Trying to figure out how to answer that.
Politically correct.
Yeah, we actually don't represent any priesthoods, but as
So what's the reason for the garb today? Why did you dress up like this?
well, it's traditional.
It's traditional.
You know, we're Kemetic, so
It's to
it's
represent your
traditional.
culture.
To represent properly. Everybody comes out to the African festival, and no one dresses Kemetically.
Yeah.
Everybody
That's what
has
I'm
on these
talking about.
African garments that actually has, and I'll say it has nothing to do with Moorish culture, has nothing to do with Kemetic culture, and everybody, you know, kind of shies away from Africa because we're not taught that we're the people of Egypt or the people of Kemet. So I'm out here to represent Kemet.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. It's good to see our black men and black women representing the glory of their culture in public display.
See, like, you know, other folks like to take claim to Kemet, right?
Right.
And I put it just like this, right? And we see the architecture, we see the hieroglyphs, we see the
right.
artwork, right?
Yeah.
You see the way they were dressed, the way they stood, like the stature,
Yeah.
posture.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's nobody else in the world look like that but this. Like, let's be real. Hey, who else in the world do you ever see dressing like that? Or if they did dress like that, would they even look right? But when you see the king
That's
and the
right.
queen walking through Brooklyn dressed in their traditional garb, it just looks right.
It just looks like us,
That's right.
natural, like Natir. I want to thank you guys for representing the ancestors
Yes.
and for representing Kemet, our glory.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Our glory, our truth. This is ourtruth.com, and you already know what it is.
Yeah.
Cheer.
Peace and love.
The life and history of our universe. Love has always been the highest wisdom revealed to the prophets of mankind. Come and learn why. The God genes decoded by R.A. Waldron.
This is R.A. Waldron, and today we're going to be speaking about the ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture. The ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture, in many ways, it was a representation and a practice of bringing heaven down on earth. And the ancient Egyptian priesthood, its leaders, did many things in order to bring the wisdom of heaven down on earth. One of the major things that they did was to erect temples and monuments, to erect pyramids in harmony with the heavens, meaning the stars, the planets, the constellations, and things like these. As a matter of fact, no temple in ancient Egypt, Kemet, was built unless it coordinated with the movement of a particular heavenly body. This is how they ensured that they brought heaven down on earth. When the Christian religion was developing, or when contemporary Christianity was in its genesis, it was a continuation of the ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture. The story of Jesus represented the sun's transit through the 12 signs of the zodiac. For this reason, Jesus is said to have 12 disciples. Early Christianity was called Gnosticism or Gnostic. It was Gnostic. Under Gnosticism, we find a deity called Abraxas. So, we're going to speak about the deity Abraxas, Gnostic Christianity, and how that was a continuation as part of the ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture in terms of bringing heaven down on earth. Once the ancient Egyptians had successfully brought heaven down to earth, the wisdom of the Neteru, the gods and goddesses that created our universe, and formulated this civilization with the trappings of culture, institutions of higher learning, astronomical observatories to keep track of the suns, moons, and stars that make up our solar system and our galaxy. They then took this to the world. They traveled to many places across the globe. What we know of ancient Egypt, its timeline, its date, and its beginning, though, doesn't represent the first attempt that our ancient ancestors had at formulating culture and building advanced classical nations of antiquity on the continent of Africa. As a matter of fact, the ancient Egyptians traced their origins to the central regions of Africa, the Congo, around the Great Lakes region where the god Hapi dwells, the mountains of the moon, Lake Tanganyika. Before Egypt, before Kemet, we had Nubia, which is based in the Sudan. Nubia is actually far more older than ancient Egypt, and it was from Nubia that the ancient Egyptians launched their enterprise in civilization building, reclaiming the Nile with advanced feats of engineering for the bringing of water and irrigation and planting of crops and making sure that the people have the food that they need. So if you want to look for the roots of the wisdom of ancient Egypt, now that it is gone, it is the contemporary classical African cultures that are still on the continent, still practicing, still holding on to the wisdom of their ancestors. There, once you compare their practices, their worship of deities, gods and goddesses, their priesthood institutions, their kingship, their system of monarchy, their system of maintaining lawful behavior, you will see the continuing wellspring of the wisdom of the ancient Egyptians. Ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture is one which sought to exemplify the highest moral virtues of the creators of our universe. In the ancient Egyptian culture, the deities are called the Neteru, and the word Neter or nature is actually what they call their deities, and from that word alone we can see where the word nature comes from, meaning that many people would state that the ancient Egyptian language and speech is actually the mother tongue of all the other languages on our planet. Certainly, a careful study of the ancient Egyptian language will yield the origins of all the other languages of the world. And this is a fact because they trace their heritage to the birthplace of the evolution of man itself. And they are the direct descendants of the first pioneers of human civilization and culture. Ancient Egyptians, they are seen as the pioneers of culture, of religion, of the major institutions of civilization. We are talking about the arts, we are talking about theater, we are talking about song, dance, we're talking about style and fashion. Once the ancient Egyptians had brought heaven down to earth, meaning designing their civilization in harmony with the movements of the heavenly bodies and the positions of the heavenly bodies, they then took this wisdom of pioneering human culture and civilization to many, many parts of the globe. The ancient Egyptians traced their origins all the way down the Nile back to the central regions of Africa, the Congo, where research is now proving that human beings first evolved, learned to walk upright, use tools, and establish themselves in family groups. It is from this wellspring, this ancient origin of pioneering civilization, that the fruits of ancient Kemet are born. When we study the ancient Egyptians and we see how glorious their culture was and their ability to establish classical advanced civilizations at such an early date, one of the key reasons they were able to do this is because they were able to pioneer farming. In the ancient Egyptian scriptures, the deity Osir, called Osiris, and the deity Oset, called Isis, is credited with pioneering farming. The ancient Egyptians farmed wheat. Wheat is a grass, and what it means is that our ancient ancestors were able to take something like grass and engineer it to produce wheat so that they can provide for tens of thousands of people. Now, the importance of this is that they were able to create a surplus of food, meaning they were able to create more food than they needed. This was done because they were effective at harnessing the power of the Nile. They couldn't harness the power of the Nile without understanding the movements of the planets. It was the movements of the planets that they used to map the inundation of the Nile so that they'll know when they could reap the benefits of the Nile, translate that into irrigation of crops. What they also did is that they built granaries where they can store grain. The ability to store grain meant that in periods where there was drought or famine, or in periods where it was difficult to farm, the people still had the food necessary to continue conducting the business of civilization. In other words, let's think of cycles as recessions and bounty. In a recession period, meaning scarce resources, they still had the food that they need to feed their people to continue living a healthy life. And it is critical that we understand that wealth really translates into the ability of a people to live a very, very glorious life. As an ancient African population that was seen around the globe as having the highest moral standards, this was testified by the Greeks and others. It was the wealth of the ancient Egyptian people properly distributed to the general citizenry that allowed them to uphold the virtues of the deities Ma'at, of the deities Osir, of the deities Oset. Ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture represents advanced pioneering genius of our ancient ancestors. They not only brought heaven down to earth, but they were able to spread it to their people in a very, very effective way. This is R.A. with the Ancient Egyptian Lifestyle and Culture Show. Brother, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Billy D.
Billy, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'm a musician, songwriter. I try to do shows here and there. Basically, just try to uplift people.
Great. Now, what kind of instrument do you play?
Well, I play guitar primarily, but I play piano and I play drums as well.
Now, a lot of people are not aware that the guitar was actually in use in ancient Kemet. As a matter of fact, the ancient Egyptians had many instruments for playing music that we see today. They also had bands and orchestras. Now, we're talking about a civilization that they claim, like the general gist is that it started around 3 to 4,000 BC.
Yeah.
So we know at least by 3,000, 2000 BC, our ancestors were pioneering what a lot of people in so-called modern civilization consider to be bands.
Yeah.
They had musicians. Now, you also stated that your music is for uplifting.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I try to make songs and I write my lyrics just to touch people's, mind. Not just touching, because a lot of the music today is just dealing with lower level frequencies. So
Right.
a lot of sex, a lot of drugs, just fake stuff that doesn't really
It
uplift.
inspires a certain type of behavior that we would call morally degenerate.
Yeah.
Now,
And,
as a student of Chem, as a student of Egypt, you could not produce music that inspired people to act immorally. All the major institutions of art and culture in ancient Kemet were orchestrated by a priesthood that had a moral canon. We don't see that anymore in the Western world. Not only that, music is actually seen as being pioneered by the deity Tehuti, who is called the master of what they call Hekau, words of power, but it's actually sound, singing, harmony, even musical notes as a language was actually pioneered by the deity Tehuti, meaning in the ancient Egyptian culture, they attribute language, music, and painting to a particular deity that pioneered it. And they sought to maintain what this deity represented to morality and how the arts and music help to contribute to morality the same way that you are.
trying.
In 2012, we have brilliant young people who still know and understand and are inspired by using music to uplift humanity as opposed to engage and inspire humanity in morally corrupt behavior.
Yeah.
Did you know that they had guitars back in ancient Egypt?
I didn't know that.
Well,
I saw the origin of guitar. They have the histories on Wikipedia.
Right.
It always goes back to Spain.
Spain.
The classical Spanish guitar. So it's always
Well,
going back.
let's
I
talk
never knew
about
that.
Spain and Wikipedia saying that the classical guitar comes from Spain.
Yeah.
The Moors ruled Spain for hundreds of years. The Moors came directly from ancient Egypt. As a matter of fact, when the Moors ruled Spain and were establishing and civilizing that area, they kept in contact and traded with their ancient Egyptian cousins and ancestors. So when we look at Spain with the guitar, it was probably the Moors who brought the guitar to Spain.
Yeah.
The Moors also brought their esoteric knowledge to Spain. In the Spanish language, the word for he and she is él and ella.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. I didn't know that.
I learned Spanish. He is ella, L,
Yeah.
and in Spanish, two L's make a Y, so E is ella. Tehuti was called ella. Ella. E-L-L-A in Spanish is ella. Tehuti is called Ya Tehuti. So in traditional African culture, it's customary to delineate man and woman as man and God, as being creators, as being created by God, and God is in the likeness thereof. So the Moors also brought their esoteric knowledge, and it's embedded in the Spanish language. Wikipedia needs to do a better job. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, when you look at the history of guitar, it always goes back to Spain.
Well, we're taking it back to Africa.
What's up?
The ancient Egyptians are the pioneers of the world's major religions, meaning Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. The ancient Egyptian culture remains a museum of human history and evolution. The ancient Egyptians had a very practical way of bringing heaven down on earth. Behind me is a stall with statues, what people call idols of various ancient Egyptian deities. Many, if not all the deities, the statues on this table represent deities of the heavens, of the stars, deities of the constellations and planets of our solar system. This meant that bringing heaven down on earth was done in not a symbolic form, but a real physical form. Every deity and statue in ancient Kemet was consecrated, as most, if not all, traditional African priests and priestesses do. It was consecrated with the Ka of the Neteru. To understand better the Ka of the Neteru and the different divisions of the anatomy of advanced beings, you can check my work, The God Genes Decoded. It was the Ka of the Neteru that the ancient Egyptians made offerings to. It was the Ka of the Neteru that helped to orchestrate the civilization, helped to guide the priests and priestesses in their daily life. Having temples to Osir, having temples to Orset, having temples to Ptah, having temples to Atum is a real physical, practical way of bringing heaven down on earth. In ancient Kemet, every single household had a place where there was a shrine, a family shrine, a shrine to their ancestors, and a shrine to a particular deity or deities that were intimately involved in the life of that family. But there was a deity that every single household had had an altar for. That deity is called Ta'urt. Others know her as Zodiacus. Ta'urt is the mother of our solar system. All the constellations of our solar system were birthed by the deity Ta'urt. And this is why every single household in ancient Kemet had a shrine to the deity Ta'urt. Bringing heaven down on earth, bringing the power and wisdom of the heavens down on earth was a real spiritual practice of these ancient Africans who pioneered classical civilization. This is R.A. Waldron. We're at Dance Africa, Brooklyn Academy of Music, and I'm here with
Mfundishi Chihutimas Ka in Haru El Salim.
Tell us, Mfundishi, what it is that you do.
Well, if you kind of look partially at the sign behind me, it kind of gives you a little idea. I'm a spiritual guide, a Kemetic high priest, a grand master in the martial arts, a motivational speaker. I'm a professor of African history, a chematologist, a gemologist. I didn't put all that on there because it would overwhelm people.
Yes, sir.
They don't understand that as African warriors, we can be masters of many things.
Definitely.
On the plantation, slave masters were intimidated by us. So they made up a saying, jack of all trades and master of none. But we were master of many trades.
Master of many trades.
So I try to practice what I preach.
Now, what inspired you to embrace, practice, and to promote the ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture?
They presented excellence in all their work. I was a student of African history, and my first degree is in African history and Africana studies, and architectural engineer. So I was always mesmerized by mathematics, science, structure.
Definitely.
And then all roads led to the Nile Valley. And then in
Say that again!
See, science is spirituality that can be seen, felt, and touched.
Definitely.
Spirituality is science that can't be seen, can't be touched, but can be felt.
Definitely.
So I was always attracted to the science. I consider myself a scientist, a spiritual scientist. And so that led me to the Nile Valley, where the excellence was at its peak.
At its peak.
And every place I look in the world where somebody was trying to do something that was technical, of advancement, of scientific, it led back to the Nile Valley. In 1976, I met Dr. Ben, and I went 5 times to Egypt with Dr. Ben. I became one of his assistants. And so that's where I just got a fever for it. And Dr. Ben would tell us, no, I want you to go even beyond us. Because he used to still use the Greek words. He would say Horus. He says, but it's Haru. You know, so I said, okay, I got to learn the Medu Neter. Right. And then in the 1980s, I met Sister Richetti.
You know, for those of you who don't know, the Medu Neter is the language and the writing script of the ancient Egyptians. And they call themselves the Kemao. The language represents the mother tongue of all of humanities and languages. And this Grandmaster is absolutely correct. All roads lead to the Nile Valley. That's why Egyptian lifestyle and culture is the premier lifestyle and culture on the planet. Continue on.
Right. So I began to master the Medu Neter. I studied under Sister Richetti Amon and Dr. Jacob Crothers Sanjetti from Chicago. And then, you know, they studied with Diop, you know, in Senegal.
Right.
And so I went to the core, to the root. I want to go to the best, you know. So as I began to master the Medu Neter, all types of roads opened up. Because I had just been reading books on ancient Egypt.
Right.
I had been taking our oppressor's word for what our ancestors were saying.
Definitely.
As I'm looking through the Pert Im Haru, and I'm looking at the translation, as I began to read, I was like, our ancestors didn't say this. They said something else.
A whole lot more.
So we have non-spiritual people translating a spiritual text. So, you know, so that led me down the valley, you know, to even enhance it more. So now I go through the, what I call the Mirkut Sebiat, that's the pyramid text. And then I go through the what I call the Pert Im Haru. That's late kingdom. Oh, the Karas Sebiat, which is called the coffin text. Right. And then I go through the axioms of Hotep Ptah, what they call Ptah Hotep. I go through the classical writings of the Second Golden Age. And let me just take a minute. Dr. Crothers and Dr. Asa Hilliard put together a new chronology of ancient Kemet, right? And the date starts of the reunification is around 4240 BCE, which is the year 1 ST, Simatawi.
4240 BC, the
Unification.
meaning like the rebirth.
Right, meaning that
Kemet went back even further.
Right.
And
Because if we look at something like Haru Im Aketi,
Haru Im Aketi is at least 35,000 years old.
Right.
Water weathering of this deity has shown that this deity, this statue, this monument is at least 35,000 years old. Very ancient people.
So therefore you needed a high science and math to do this. The Haru Im Aketi in Kemet is 240 feet long, 60 feet high, in perfect proportions. Now I do have to make a comment that the head of the man was not the original.
No.
The original was either a lion or Inpu, right? And then in the reunification of ancient Kemet, they made a high priest head. So that means master your animal domain, but rise to your higher spiritual consciousness.
And it also represents lion culture, meaning what my Shepsu said to me, the lion pride is the model for the human family.
Yes.
That might take a lot of people off because lions have lionesses.
Right.
Plural. The lion pride represents the model for the human family. Ancient African lifestyle and culture culminated in the Nile Valley civilizations. We followed the Neteru, bringing heaven down to earth, exemplifying that in our family structure.
Yes, sir.
Was our wisdom, was our culture.
And so they left these symbols. So that's what I like about Kemet, for example. See, if you go to Israel or you go to they'll say, oh, this is where so-and-so used to be. This is where the tower used to be. But when you go to Kemet, it's still there, and this is older than that.
Yes, sir.
You know, and so, it's like the proof is in the pudding. And so when you look at the Mir Imhakut, I mean, just the shape creates negative ions, which puts you in an alpha state. Helps you think at your very optimum.
Not to mention the resonance frequency generated by the stones and people chanting.
It takes it to another level.
Hekau, the magic and science of sound that structures matter, and we are matter. Entering into such a monument, conducting songs of praises to the Neteru, invoking their name, and having your spirit, your body imbued with their wisdom. This is ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture, not the dogma of religious practice, but the science of evolution.
In Kemet, at the temple in front of the pyramid where Haru Im Aketi is, and let me say this, no Sphinx. Sphinx is a Greek word for a mythological creature that will kill you if you don't know its riddle, and it has wings. Haru Im Aketi, imagine if your son came up to you and said, Dad, I want to be a Sphinx. You might say, well, whoa, wait a minute, son. But now if he came up and said, I want to be Haru Im Aketi. I want to protect our legacy from sunrise to sunset. You'll say, good job, son. Okay, all right, so we have to use the correct terminology. But at the temple in front of Haru Im Aketi, with Ka-F Ra built on, that temple has, there's no corners to it. Every so-called corner is rounded. So I brought that up when you talked about sound, the Hekau. So chanting and sound and singing was used as a healing element in ancient Kemet. And that's why it's important for you to learn the Madu Netcha. You want to say, Amin Ra Nasut Netcha, Atin Ra Nebin Ankh, De Inu Ankh Uja Seneb. You want to be able to chant these energies because vibrations and sound is healing. That's why when you go to a Kemetic spiritual healer, when they begin to talk to you, the healing is in effect right there.
Definitely.
They didn't do nothing. All they did was talk to you. So the sound vibration starts the internal healing. And then you believe because only you can heal yourself. All we do is act as guides to direct you towards your healing. So, you can understand where I'm coming from.
I definitely want to thank Master Teacher Mfundishi for bringing so much wisdom about ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture, for having the knowledge of the history, the temple practices. We live on a planet now that is dominated by Christianity, is dominated by Judaism and Islam. All three of these religions have their roots and origins in the culture of the ancient people of the Nile Valley. Our ancient African ancestors laid the groundwork and the foundation and produced the fruits from which these later cultures, religions, etc. drew their wisdom, drew their knowledge and understanding from, and repackaged it in such a way that it divorced it from the original. We are the original. Brother man, I want to thank you very much. I want you to tell people where they can find you on the internet and your physical location here in New York City.
Okay. I'm located in Harlem on 125th Street. So usually I'm vending on 125th Street on Thursday, Fridays, and Saturday. I have a brownstone in Harlem, so if they call me, let me get my card out here. If they, take one here. If they call me at 347-792-9138, they can find me on Facebook, Mfundishi Jahutimas, or they can go to my website, and that's www.blackgoldspiritualwarriors.com. And last but not least, my book. I'd like to do a little shout out for my book, Spiritual Warriors and Healers. This is my second edition. We sold over 5,000 of my first edition in less than 3 years. So this is the second edition of this particular book, Spiritual Warriors and Healers. And so if you want to understand the Kemetic legacy from mental, physical, and spiritual, I invite you into the pages.
This is R.A. Waldron with the Egyptian Lifestyle and Culture Show, and I'm here with a very, very popular, powerful, and beautiful queen, Queen Afua. Queen Afua, would you tell our listeners out there a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am a holistic health practitioner and also a Kemetic priestess, and a yoga master.
Nice.
I've written a few books, 5 books on holistic health
Nice.
and how it relates to our people primarily. And so that's my work that I give serve to the community globally.
Great. Now, you mentioned being a priestess, and you also mentioned yoga. Now, I know that a lot of people don't know that yoga was pioneered, it was developed and perfected in the Nile Valley civilizations of Africa. Can you tell our audience out there a little bit about yoga and Egyptian lifestyle?
Well, many people believe that Kemetic lifestyle, or that it's not really a lifestyle, that it's a religion. It's not a religion, it's a way of life. So we are the ones who created holistic lifestyle, African people from the Nile Valley. So from yoga practice to meditation to words as power and medicine, that's part of our way of therapy. And it kept the heart as light as a feather. It kept you in a state of balance, truth, and righteousness with all your relations. And so along with that, yoga is a way of life, so that means how you eat. Our ancestors were primarily vegetarians. They might have some fish, but it was mostly beans and peas and lentils as protein. And as a
salads.
Result, and greens and fruits and herbs and aromatherapy. All of that's our culture.
Right, when you talk about like that diet, when I look at the Mediterranean diet, which is North Africa, we are looking at the continuation of our dietary practice in terms of having a salad. We might associate this with Western culture, but it was our people that pioneered having a salad with your food. We mostly think of yoga as something from the East, and as a priestess, you really went into how important yoga is for stilling the heart, for stilling the mind, and how important this was as a practice that helped to bring health and holistic living. And I'm really glad to hear a person state that we pioneered what is being called the holistic lifestyle as part of our culture.
Yes.
I'm sure that you have used your wisdom to heal many people. Can you speak to us about that?
Well, one of the things I said, I don't heal anyone. I teach them how to heal themselves.
Right.
And so I help them with the 4 elements, which is also our culture.
Right.
When we would heal ourselves, we would heal through air, breath, life, life-giving, sunlight. The sun goes into the plants, vegetation, heals cancer, heals diabetes, heals high blood pressure. And then we take the herbs for obesity and depression. So in nature, everything is in nature there to provide for us wellness.
Right.
From the clay to the water to the flushing. Our bodies are made of 75% water. The Nile is within us.
Right.
So when we purify our own inner Nile, then we are elevated into a place of Nefertun. One of the things that we're doing on the 9th of June is welcoming both women and men to come do Abu Mka'at, which is I've taken the Kemetic teachings and I've developed a system of womb yoga dance.
Nice.
Because too many women are having hysterectomies because they're living an unnatural Western lifestyle.
From having fibroids and then having a hysterectomy.
Well, from fibroid tumors,
Right.
many times the fibroids grow larger than the uterus.
Yes.
They have to take them out. And then it causes a lot of heavy bleeding and clotting.
Wow.
Or they're not able to conceive. But when they start taking an African natural lifestyle, which is what I'm teaching from my ancestors, the womb rejuvenates, the prostate in men rejuvenates, and the heart opens up and we're not carrying pain into relationships.
Wow, it's really deep and profound when you state that embracing an African lifestyle, a holistic lifestyle pioneered by African people, will help to reverse and even prevent a lot of the illnesses that you see our women especially carrying. I'm really surprised by how many women have fibroids. Really surprised, especially black women, which is why it is critical for black women to listen to black female healers that carry their ancestral culture and listen to the diet recommendations to avoid this system that we are are living in that's nothing like what our ancestors did.
Exactly.
So I definitely want to thank you for being that ambassador for our ancient Egyptian lifestyle and culture. And thank you for being on our show.